Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, May 3rd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. It looks like a cooler day in Riverside, with the high temperature reaching 68.1 degrees and the low dipping to 57.8 tonight. Coming up on today's show, we delve into the dire situation in Gaza, examining the complex factors behind the severe hunger crisis unfolding under an Israeli blockade. We discuss the restrictions and their impact on the civilian population. Then, we turn our attention stateside to investigate what is fueling the worst measles outbreak the U.S. has experienced in recent years. We'll explore the potential causes and the public health response. All this and more is coming up right here on Alex's News. We turn now to a deeply concerning situation developing in Gaza. For 2 months, a stringent Israeli blockade has been in place, leading to what reports describe as a dire humanitarian crisis. Joining us to break down the details is our news reporter, Ethan. Ethan, can you outline the scope of this blockade?
Grace, it's incredibly severe. Since a ceasefire expired back in early March, Israel has heavily restricted the entry of essential supplies. We're talking about food, medicine, fuel, basically everything needed for daily life. Aid organizations are calling this the longest and most intense blockade since the conflict began. According to the Siyasat Daily, which cites reporting from the Associated Press, thousands of tons of vital aid are literally stuck at border crossings, unable to reach the more than 2 million people trapped inside Gaza.
Stuck at the border? That sounds critical. Have aid groups run out of supplies within Gaza then?
That is exactly what's happening. Analysis highlighted by Perplexity API indicates the World Food Program, or WFP, actually distributed its very last food parcels back on April 25th. That was over a week ago. Other major groups like UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, are reporting similarly depleted reserves. The internal pipeline is dry.
The human cost must be devastating. What are we hearing from people on the ground?
It's heartbreaking, Grace. Both the Kashmir Observer and the Siyasat Daily paint a grim picture, especially in places like Khan Yunis. Imagine long lines at community kitchens, but there's simply not enough food to go around. Many people, including children, wait for hours only to leave with nothing. The Siyasat Daily shared the story of one mother, Niveen Abu Arar, who has 8 children. She couldn't find any food or milk, and resorted to giving her baby just water in a bottle. She said her family hasn't eaten bread in a month and a half.
A month and a half? Without bread? That's a basic staple. Is food even affordable if it can be found?
That's another major hurdle. The Siyasat Daily reports that the price of essential goods has absolutely skyrocketed. A 25-kilogram bag of flour, which is obviously crucial for making bread, now costs around $360. That represents a price increase of up to 1,400% compared to before. It's completely out of reach for almost everyone. It's less about affording food and more about finding any at all, but the price makes it impossible regardless.
With such scarcity and cost, what does this mean for nutrition, especially for vulnerable groups?
The impact is stark. The Siyasat Daily notes that an estimated 65,000 children are facing severe malnutrition, and overall, a staggering 92% of young children aged 6 to 23 months, plus pregnant and breastfeeding mothers, are not getting the basic nutrients they need because the variety of food just isn't available.
Is there any capacity for people in Gaza to produce their own food?
That's been severely hampered as well. Reports from both the Kashmir Observer and the Siyasat Daily mention that Israeli military actions, including airstrikes, have damaged agricultural land. Fishermen and their boats have also reportedly been targeted. One aid worker, quoted by the Siyasat Daily, stated quite bluntly that Israel has engineered a situation where Palestinians cannot grow or fish for their own food. And beyond food, the Kashmir Observer adds there's a critical lack of shelter, with aid groups having no tents left for an estimated 1 million displaced people needing them.
How are international organizations reacting to this blockade?
There's widespread condemnation. Multiple sources, including the Kashmir Observer and the Siyasat Daily, state that aid groups view the blockade as a form of collective punishment against civilians, which is prohibited under international law. Perplexity API references experts like Tom Dannenbaum, who stressed that deliberately blocking aid needed for survival constitutes the war crime of starvation of civilians. Amnesty International has even accused Israel of, quote, genocidal intent, end quote, through actions like denying aid. The warnings are dire mass death from starvation and disease if things don't change immediately.
Has Israel provided specific data on aid allowed in during these past 2 months?
That's a key point of missing information. Perplexity API notes a significant lack of data released by COGAT, the Israeli body that coordinates civilian affairs including aid. While they historically publish truck counts, specific figures for this March to May 2025 blockade period weren't found in the reviewed sources. This is concerning when UN agencies estimate 500 to 600 trucks are needed daily just to prevent famine, a number far higher than even past peak averages reported by COGAT. UNRWA stated this month that there were effectively no functional crossings for life-saving aid.
And what about the diplomatic response from major international players?
The report suggests it's been quite muted during this specific 2-month window. Perplexity API did highlight that Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister condemned the blockade just yesterday, May 2nd, calling it a violation of international law. However, the materials reviewed didn't detail specific actions or statements from the UN Security Council, the US, or the EU as a bloc addressing this particular blockade period. Historically, the Security Council has often been deadlocked on Gaza issues.
It's a truly catastrophic picture you're painting, Ethan. Thank you for bringing us these important details from the Kashmir Observer, the Siyasat Daily citing the Associated Press, and Perplexity API.
You're welcome, Grace.
We turn now to a concerning public health story developing across the country. The United States is seeing a significant resurgence of measles, a disease many thought was largely behind us. Joining us now for the details is our health reporter, Chloe. Chloe, these numbers sound quite alarming.
They really are, Grace. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, as cited by The Hill, there were 935 confirmed measles cases across 29 states as of yesterday, May 2nd. To put that in perspective, both the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and The Hill report this is already more than triple the total number of cases we saw in all of 2024. It's definitely not a measly increase.
Triple the cases from last year already? That's staggering. Is there one area driving this surge?
Absolutely. Texas has unfortunately become the clear epicenter. The AJC reports that a staggering 683 of those national cases, the vast majority, have occurred in Texas. Reporting from the AJC also notes this outbreak is heavily concentrated within an under-vaccinated Mennonite community in Gaines County, West Texas. Tragically, the AJC confirmed that 2 unvaccinated elementary school children have died from measles-related illnesses there.
That is heartbreaking. And is this Texas outbreak staying contained within the state?
Sadly, no. Health officials cited by the AJC indicate related outbreaks involving the same measles strain are happening regionally, including in the neighboring Mexican state of Chihuahua and even up in Ontario, Canada. Perplexity API analysis suggests the Chihuahua outbreak is directly linked to Texas, likely through travel. Within the U.S., the CDC data referenced by Perplexity API shows this Texas cluster has spread into neighboring states like New Mexico, which The Hill notes has the second highest count at 67 cases, and Oklahoma, possibly even Kansas. This single large cluster originating in Texas accounts for about 82% of all U.S. cases this year.
82% from that one cluster? That's huge. But we mentioned cases in 29 states. Are there other significant outbreaks?
Yes, there are active outbreaks, which health officials typically define as 3 or more related cases, happening elsewhere. Sources like the AJC and the Daily Item mention active outbreaks in 10 states. There's some slight variation in the lists depending on reporting times, but recent CDC data identifies states like Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, New Mexico, Kansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, and of course Texas as having these active, linked transmission chains. So while Texas is the biggest, the problem is quite widespread.
So, Chloe, why is this happening now? Measles was considered eliminated in the U.S. back in 2000.
That's the crucial question, Grace, and experts consistently point to one primary driver: declining vaccination rates. The AJC emphasizes that this resurgence is happening in communities with low vaccination coverage. The Hill reported that most people infected were unvaccinated or didn't know their status. Nationally, kindergarten vaccination coverage for the MMR vaccine, that's measles, mumps, and rubella, has dropped from over 95% down to about 92.7% recently, according to the Hill and Perplexity API data.
Only 92.7%? I've heard that needs to be higher for protection.
Exactly. Experts cited by the Hill and the AJC stress the importance of what's called herd immunity. That means having a very high percentage of the population vaccinated, ideally above 95%, to protect everyone, including those who can't get vaccinated for medical reasons. When coverage drops below that 95% threshold, like our current national average, it creates gaps where the virus can spread easily, leading to outbreaks like the one in the West Texas community known for lower vaccination rates. It shows how spotty coverage can lead to a real rash of cases.
Can you quickly remind us what measles entails and how it's prevented?
Sure. The AJC notes typical symptoms include fever, runny nose, cough, red eyes, and then that signature rash. There's no specific antiviral cure. Doctors focus on managing symptoms and preventing serious complications like pneumonia or brain swelling, known as encephalitis. Prevention is key, and as the Hill emphasizes, the MMR vaccine is highly effective and safe. The standard recommendation is 2 doses for children.
With over 900 cases, has the U.S. officially lost its measles elimination status?
It's a precarious situation, but according to analysis from Perplexity API referencing CDC definitions, the U.S. has not officially lost its elimination status yet. Elimination means no continuous year-round transmission for 12 months or more. The current outbreaks are still seen as stemming from imported cases, sparking transmission in susceptible, under-vaccinated groups, not re-established endemic spread. However, if transmission within these clusters continues for a full year, potentially into 2026, that status could be at risk. That drop to 92.7% coverage leaves about 280,000 kindergartners vulnerable nationally.
A critical situation indeed, underscoring the importance of vaccination. Chloe, thank you for breaking down this complex story for us, drawing on reporting from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, The Hill, The Daily Item, the CDC, and Perplexity API.
You're welcome, Grace.
Okay, here are some other headlines. Interest is intensifying around the upcoming papal conclave set for May 7th to elect Pope Francis's successor. Global betting has surged past $10 million, with Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State, currently leading the odds. Bettors from over 140 countries are participating, particularly from the UK, US, and Ireland, with some platforms seeing betting interest eclipse major sporting events. The conclave itself, involving up to 135 cardinals voting behind closed doors, could last over a month. This public betting frenzy contrasts sharply with the traditional secrecy of the process. Historically, the longest papal election stretched nearly 3 years, from 1268 to 1271 in Viterbo, leading to the term conclave, as cardinals were locked in to speed up the decision. That lengthy process, caused by deep divisions, eventually resulted in the election of Pope Gregory X. In Tennessee, state police have released body camera footage from a November 2022 traffic stop involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He was initially pulled over for speeding on I-40 with 8 passengers. Officers suspected human trafficking due to the passenger count and lack of luggage. noting Abrego Garcia had $1,400 cash. However, he explained he was transporting workers to a construction site in Missouri. No charges were filed, and he received a warning for an expired license. This footage emerges amid controversy surrounding Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran native who was deported to El Salvador in March, despite a 2019 court order preventing his removal due to fears of persecution. His family denies Trump administration claims of gang affiliation, and there are calls for his return to the U.S. Tragedy in Greece, where a 38-year-old woman died early on May 3, 2025, in Thessaloniki. Police say an explosive device detonated in her hands around 5 a.m. as she attempted to plant it near a bank ATM. The powerful blast caused extensive damage to nearby storefronts and vehicles. The woman, who died shortly after arriving at the hospital, had prior convictions, including bank robbery, and known ties to an incarcerated anti-authoritarian figure. Authorities are investigating potential links to extreme left-wing groups and suspect involvement in a previous parcel bomb attack on the Thessaloniki Court of Appeal. And in California, a shooting occurred Friday afternoon at the Spartan College of Aeronautics and Technology in Inglewood, southwest of Los Angeles. 2 female employees were shot inside an office on campus. One is listed in critical condition. Authorities believe the suspect is a former employee who is no longer on the premises, though a search was conducted. The incident is being treated as workplace violence. The college trains about 500 students in aviation maintenance. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.